Welcome to Designer Mystery Block 3. There's only two general things to know before we get started. One is that you should use a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance for all your sewing. And the second is that you might not want to use white thread this month. You'd still want to use a light color, but the white can be really hard to see when you're trying to match up points at some places. This month is called Ray of Sunshine, and I like the way this one turned out. I really do love the fabrics and prints for this. There's just a few tips and tricks this month. The first one is when you get your fabric, you're gonna have a whole bunch more of this white on white tonal. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but it's that one that's the white print with the white flowers printed on it. I didn't need mine at all this month. I just took the whole thing and put it in my leftover fabric bag. That way when I get to the end, I can take all my leftover fabric and make another project out of it. So because this was month 3 and we've gotten this fabric every month, you should have enough where you could use your first and second month's leftover white fabric and not even need to use this month's leftover, or not leftover, but this month's fabric that was sent to you in your kit. The next thing, there's only one thing about cutting, and some people would care and some people wouldn't. These coral or orange blocks end up being 1 inch, so they're pretty small. So when you cut those, if you care about having something on them or not, that's the only thing you might want a somewhat fussy cut. I did kind of fussy cut mine, but I didn't want it to look like I was trying too hard, so I didn't like put everything in the center or make them all the same. I tried to fussy cut them and make it look like I did it, but so that they wouldn't just be plain orange blocks, because it would have been very easy to just cut them and have nothing on these. So like I have the green and a little speck of the flower, and I don't have any just solid orange ones. If you don't care about that, then it's no big deal. If you do care about that, that's just something to keep in mind as you are cutting them. So once you put your two fabric squares, B and E, together in order to make 2 triangle units, what I did is, because my feet are really easy to change out, I took off my 1/4 inch foot and I just put on my regular old sewing foot. That way I can just have my line go along the edge of the foot, so I don't have to really guess where I'm putting it. And I moved my needle to the right and put my needle up down one time. Let me zoom in so you can see it, in order to see where the needle is. And then I just used my ruler to see if that dot is a smidge less than a 1/4 inch, since I need a scant 1/4 inch, and it is. So I know this is where I want my needle to be, so that I can sew this a scant 1/4 inch away from this middle line. So I'll just line it up with the edge of the foot, lower my presser foot, and sew right along that line once I've determined where I wanted my needle to be. And once you've done one side of the square to get one triangle and chain pieced it, you can just cut in the center of your first one and bring it around and repeat the same thing through the other side, only lift the needle and move it to the other side toward the left, so you can use this edge for measuring your scant 1/4 inch seam. So you do it the same way, only on the left instead of the right for your other side. So we've done that, and now we have our half square triangle units. I'm not going to rotary cut these points off. Instead, because if you cut the points off with a rotary cutter, let me see if I can get it to show, you're most likely going to cut through your line of stitching on some of them at least. And when you do that, they're more likely to come apart as you're working on it and sewing on it. So just to make sure that that doesn't happen, then all you need to do is take your scissors and just kind of go right above the line of stitching, wherever your thread ended. So here's an example of a finished one where I cut it off, and you can see it's shorter, but it's not perfectly even. But that way you don't have to worry about it unraveling as you're working, but then it's still short enough that those don't stick out. When I got to this part of sewing those middle squares to the half square triangle units, I normally would do it like this, where the thing is on top and the flat part is on the back. But when I did it that way, because the triangle corner is at the bottom. I'll zoom in, you can kind of see it made my stitching go kind of sideways. It sort of forced it to the side, and it put a little lump in the fabric, and it kind of stretched it out because those are, always forget if it's on the bias or not on the bias, but anyhow, it's not a good idea to put your triangle corner at the bottom. So what you should do instead is just do it from this side where you have your flat piece on it, and just have your half square triangle on the bottom instead of the top, and that'll have it go so straight and not stretch that triangle out of shape like mine did. So when you're working on the center of your block and you want your X to meet and you want your white parts to make a triangle, the way you make sure you get those to match is, I already did this one, but you do just like we do on some of the other pieces, where you lengthen your stitch length. I did mine to about 3.3, but it doesn't have to be exact. You just want to make it bigger, just in case you have to tear it out. And you match it up where you think it's matched, and you open it up and test it out. And I don't want to pull it too hard because I don't want to loosen the thread so it's so loose, but it doesn't look like in the video because I'm not stretching it all the way out, but it does make a nice little V. So once you test it out and you like it, then you just go back to your sewing machine and you put that stitch length back to whatever's normal for you, which for mine it's 2.5, and then you just start back at the beginning and you sew straight down, making sure you land where you sewed. I've been working for a while now on getting this X to go together, and where these triangles are supposed to meet and this triangle is supposed to meet, I've tried doing a little trick where you sew it and you turn it over and you try to get it to meet, and it is not working. Every single time one's a little higher or lower than the other, and so I've redone it many times. It reaches a point when if you keep sewing in the same spot over and over and over again, you start to damage the fabric. And I could zoom in, I guess, to get you to see it, but like it starts to pucker it up and put holes in it. And so eventually you don't want to keep sewing it over and over again and trying to get it right. So if you have that happen like I have, you can always pull out your needle and thread. I pulled out my needle and white and I just sewed it. Let me zoom in so you can see it. It's a lot easier with the hand needle because you can just put it right on the thread on the front where you know the line is, and right on the thread on the back. And that way you know, hey, this is on the right spot at both spots. And you can kind of open up and test it a little bit and see, hey, yes, when I sew that, I get still loose there, so it's not exactly perfect, but hey, when I do that, that's right on the right spot. So if you end up having a really hard time where you just can't get it right, that's something you can always do, is just pull out your hand needle and thread and make it work that way. And the last thing I have to share is that when I went to baste along the edge to keep my seams from coming apart for the next several months, to baste the outside edge means you do a longer stitch length. And I was just curious what would happen if I used a smaller stitch length. So I used a smaller stitch length and I did not like it. When I had held this block up to my 12.5-inch square before I basted it with a smaller stitch length, it was almost perfect. Like if I turn it around, this is a 12.5-inch ruler, you can see that it's, well, I'm not holding it right, but you can see that it's almost even with the ruler. But it was pretty spot on before I stitched with the smaller stitch length. The smaller stitch length, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it kind of like puckered it up in different places. It made it tighter. So I'm going to go back with my seam ripper, and at places where there isn't a seam, like kind of in this middle, maybe in that middle, and just sort of cut some of those stitches to loosen that up a little bit, because it did make it a little too tight. So you definitely want to listen and baste those with a longer stitch length. But I always wonder what happens if you try something different or do it a different way. Does it matter? And in this case, it does matter. It made it tighter. So that's it for this month, and hopefully you'll like it and enjoy it and subscribe and come back next month. And thank you very much. Have a great day.